The Centurion Project. Written by the 8th day of night. The Hearth's Warming Interlude. Journal entry 920. Short entry today. It's that time of year. The wind is howling, I have no food, and I'm alone. Typical Christmas, I guess. I just wish somebody was left. Somebody to talk to or just sit near. I'd give the clothes off my back for somebody to share a meal with. I'd even settle for talking while they just ate. I hate winter. I hate Christmas. It took my family away, and I'll see it erased from the history books for its crime. Elias stared at his ceiling with dead eyes. His room was dark, empty, and cold. His mood matched that feeling with frightening intensity. It had been a long couple of weeks, and today was only going to make that day worse. To prevent the lonely desperation from settling in, Elias shoved off his covers and rolled to his feet, shuffling towards the bathroom for a shower. He stopped momentarily to check over his watch. 4:30 in the afternoon. Lovely. He had managed to wake up just when the holiday was starting. He had tried exhausting himself as much as possible the previous day, but with his fight with Bookbinder, it hadn't exactly gone as planned, and he had simply stumbled into bed to avoid thinking. The thought of the shouting match between himself and the unicorn brought out a new wave of melancholy as he trudged into the shower. It would be better just to let the hot water wash away his feelings for a while. As he stood under the shower head, Elias thought about how he was going to occupy his time. Technically speaking, he wasn't supposed to be in the castle. All the staff, including all 3 guard groups, got Hearthwarming Eve and Hearthwarming Day off. Elias had checked, and even Anyon had found somebody to go home with for Hearthwarming. A purple Pegasus named Split Tip that he had eventually caught. It was some sort of strange griffin mating habit, but the pair seemed happy enough together, so Elias made no attempts to butt into their celebration. Since he had nowhere else to go, however, he was stuck. Elias opened his eyes to let the scalding water attack them. The sharp pain was more than enough to distract his mind again as he tried to wander back to the argument and subsequent fallout. He already hated this time of year, and now he had one more bad memory to throw into the stack. He needed to find a distraction, something to numb the ache. As Elias rubbed at his eyes, he remembered a certain bag of cigarettes and a half-full flask that was secured safely into his rucksack. It wasn't anything miraculous, but it would work well as a numbing agent if he could find a suitable distraction. Elias left the shower, still occasionally rubbing at his now sore eyes as he dried off. He didn't bother turning on the light to his room, content to fumble around in the dark so he didn't have to see the abandoned personal effects of his 2 absent roommates. He had a detailed idea where everything was anyway, so with only 2 stubbed toes, Elias dressed himself in both his regular tunic as well as his guard armor, and he rifled through his ruck for his illegal narcotics. Bookbinder had tried to find them, but she had ultimately failed, mostly through a secret deal with Nightflash to keep them on the move. Hugs were evidently an effective currency for the Pegasus, and though it had pained Elias to sell himself for so cheap, he found that it now paid off in spades. Besides, with what had happened, it wasn't likely that Flash would even come to claim his. Elias stood up quickly as he ripped off the well-abused pack of cigarettes from his ruck. His left hand lashed onto the flask, and Elias quickly tucked them both into his belt. On a whim, Elias drew forth one of the cigarettes, tucking it behind his ear as he checked his lighter. It still had a bit of fuel in it, but that was probably going to change this evening. Another piece of his past turned to trash. Elias wondered briefly if he would keep it and attempt to refill it once the lighter died, then decided it didn't matter. It would happen in the future. No point in fretting about it now. Elias weaved around his bed, scooping up his scutum in a single pilum as he plopped his helmet loosely on his head. If he was going to be largely alone for the day, he saw no reason not to carry out his usual duties. He could stop by the cafeteria, breaking in if necessary, to get some food. He might be rusty, but he still had his lockpicking set. It would be a time-consuming distraction if nothing else. After that, he could make up his own guard schedule, wandering about as he did his job with the same blank focus he always did. It had surprised Elias to find that he could stand for hours at a time without thinking of a single thing. It was a marvelous way to relax. If only he didn't have to stand at attention for the entire time, constantly dealing with the stares and glares of any ponies that looked in his way. While his friends seemed quick to forgive and forget, some people still treated him like a ticking time bomb. He had reassured as many as possible that it would only happen if they decided to come after him or his friends, but after a while, Elias quit. Better for them to be nervous around him, just so long as they were scared of him. Fear was just as good as any deterrent as respect. Elias found the cafeteria unlocked, and so he pillaged it softly, sticking a cloth sack to fill with bread and a few cans of bean stew. It had been a long time since he had to eat soup out of a cold can, but maybe it would bring him some familiarity and comfort. At least he wouldn't be upholding the Christmas tradition of starving. Unfortunately, the guard kitchen was absent of booze, so he couldn't swipe any extra to warm his night up. With a small bag of loot over his shoulder, Elias locked up the cafeteria before wandering back to his room to grab the shoddily made cloak the castle tailor had sewn him. Evidently, she was a friend of Whiteshine, and she hadn't appreciated Elias's attack on the pony. The cloak was made of a single, thin layer of wool that barely went down to his waist. It did nothing to ward away the cold from his bare legs, and if the wind was blowing, it did nothing to keep him warm at all. Elias hadn't complained, however. He had no alternatives, no knowledge about Canterlot to find the appropriate clothes maker. On top of that, Elias had no money, or at least none that he knew how to get access to. With the princesses providing all of his needs, he never found a reason to figure out how to collect his paycheck, so Elias found himself without. Until winter had begun to set in, it hadn't mattered. But with the tailor actively sabotaging his clothing requests, Elias found himself suffering in silence as he shivered during a guard shift that took place outside. Elias briefly considered heading to the castle entrance for a while. The cold would definitely act as a distraction, and he would get the opportunity to smoke. Elias checked his watch and felt the thin cloak on his back, then shook his head and snorted. Only half an hour had passed, and he would need the cigarettes to get through what was going to be a very long night. Elias sighed and wandered past the empty infirmary. Scalpel was visiting a brother in some city by the coast. Manhattan, if Elias remembered correctly. Elias briefly poked his head outside to look at the prospect of throwing a pila, but the training grounds sat dark, the magical lanterns that kept them lit at night out. A light dusting of snow covered the grounds, and a gust of wind sent Elias back into the relative warmth of the castle. He frowned as he shook off a shiver, rubbing off his arm as he continued to stalk through the castle. It was usually a quiet place, even with the bustling staff cleaning everything, but now it was downright silent. It made an already chilly building seem cold, and Elias found that he couldn't ward away the chill that had managed to creep into his very bones. He blew into his hands as he rubbed them together, wondering if he should just give up and try to black out in a room. The idea of sitting in the dark didn't exactly excite him, however, so Elias pushed on to a different section of the castle. He wandered back to the infirmary, checking in that nobody was inside. Then he continued to one of his normal guard positions, tying his bag of food around his waist. Elias withdrew his peeling from its sheath and leaned against the wall with a sigh, trying to find the blackness that came with hours of guarding. Luna sighed happily as she smacked her lips. She followed it with a wide yawn, her mood cheerful as she rolled over her plush bed. It had been a labor of love from her sister the year prior, also known as the last year the pair would exchange hearthwarming gifts. Though she absolutely adored the gift, especially given the softness of the feather mattress, she had been horrified to learn that Celestia had been plucking her own feathers over the past 1,000 years to make the bed a reality. Sure, it would never lose its fluff, nor its softness, but the fact that her sister was plucking feathers was insane, and Luna had forced her to promise to never do such a thing again. It also didn't help that all Luna got in return was a never-ending slice of her favorite cake, a Pegasi-made cloud cake. Though Tia had put on her brave face and had given Luna one of her trademark bone-crushing hugs, Luna couldn't help but to feel like her gift didn't carry the same level of thoughtfulness. Luna giggled softly as she remembered finding Celestia the next morning, kicking softly from beneath a pile of pillows, the uneaten cake on top. The alicorn had grown something about eating too much cake, and then Luna had been too kind enough to clean her up and tuck her into bed for hearthwarming. When she awoke, the pair had simply sat around talking and enjoying each other's company by the fire, a mountain of pillows and blankets around them. It had been a marvelous day, one that Luna would treasure for years to come. Luna rolled over, checking the clock that sat silently beside her bed. 6:35 in the evening. Excellent. As was her new tradition, Luna had officially slept in, and as she sat up to stretch, she was glad for the few minutes of extra rest. Today was going to be a wonderful day. Celestia would awaken from her nap in 20 minutes, and Twilight and her friends would be over in 2 hours. Though she had a lot of work to do, Luna was looking forward to all of it. It was rare that she was not hounded by servants or nobility to look prim and proper. Though she was used to the royal treatment, Luna was also used to being able to do whatever she wanted to do. If she wanted to spend an evening throwing flour at the royal kitchen, then by the moon she would do so. Who cared what the nobility thought? Unfortunately, Celestia informed her upon her return that such actions were generally frowned upon. so only the opportunity she found to truly let her hair down was hearthwarming, when the castle was empty of everyone but her close friends and sister. After her return, Luna had been nervous about hearthwarming. Many of the old traditions had been abandoned, such as the ceremonial gladiator tournaments to dispose of excess grievances, or the ceremonial Wendigo burning, to, well, burn another filthy Wendigo. With her sister's help, however, she had been introduced to softer traditions, and this year would be her first attempt to what Tia called a hearthwarming celebration. The tradition had originally just been between Celestia and Twilight, but after her return they had taken a small break for Luna's sake. But this year would be different. This year she and Tia were supposed to be making an assortment of baked goods for the party, which would happen as the moon finished rising. Then the elements would arrive, and they would have a fun-filled evening with sweets, hot chocolate, a raging fire, and fine company. They would talk and tell stories late into the night, then they were supposed to pass out in a large pile until next morning. Luna was particularly excited about the last aspect of party. Herds, even platonic ones, had become frowned upon in recent years, and Luna couldn't help but fathom the reason behind it. The shortage of stallions was as common as ever, and as the practice was actually conducive to greater harmony amongst her subjects, along with some other notable but arguably fun festivities. While she had no interest in romantic herds, Luna's platonic herd used to be legendary for the massive 100-pony pile they would form to sleep, and she could hardly wait for the evening to begin. Perhaps if she could get some popular ponies involved in a small-scale herd, she could bring the practice back to life. She had, after all, already drafted a bill that would grant a tax cut to any pony that would wish to snuggle with their princess, if only a small-minded nobility didn't get in her way when she tried to pass it. In time, they would see the true glory of snuggles. Luna giggled softly to herself. It would be a joyous evening, and her extra sleep would help her last. She needed the extra half hour to make the moon rising special after all, and what way better to replenish her energy reserves? Luna lazily rolled off the bed, slipping her hooves into her fuzzy bunny slippers that one of her guards had gifted her. The poor Thestral had been the first to approach her upon her return to join her newly formed Lunar Guard, and she had accepted immediately, offering him a high position if he was willing to work hard for it. What had surprised her was when the young stallion had declined, favoring a simple guard position instead. He simply wished to serve her, and as a gift for giving him the average guard position, he had sent her a pair of bright pink slippers, and he claimed were almost as good as the real fur. As Luna dug out her centuries-old manticore fur robe, she found that she agreed with the pony. They were almost as good. Nothing could beat the real thing, though. The genuine fur was so soft and so fluffy, enchanted with an eternity spell to make sure it never faded. It would be impossible to find one now. The intentional sale of furs has been outlawed prior to her return as well. Luna looked at herself in the mirror. Her mane, usually flowing and smooth, looked ruffled, with some stars in it clumping together. She lacked her usual crown, as well as her usual regalia. The only thing around her neck was the pendant, something that Celestia had practically cried over when she saw Luna wearing it. They had a personal party that evening, and Luna could practically feel any disagreements the pair had resolved themselves as they hugged and chatted in earnest for the first real time since her return. Luna left the happy memory alone as she returned to her reflection. Overall, she looked positively undignified, disheveled, and sloppy. Everything a princess should not be. Luna giggled and clapped her hoofs together in excitement. Perfect. The castle would be empty of guards and servants, a tradition that had sad origins, but now was a happy occasion. Before her return, and before Celestia had started taking on magical students, she had emptied the castle to reflect and be isolated for a day or two, letting her ponies have their happy housewarmings while she sat and watched the moon alone. Now they would fill the empty halls with their laughter and their silly games. No longer would any pony in all of Equestria have a sour hearth-warming. Luna trotted over to her bedroom door, more than ready to begin sipping at a steaming cup of coffee. She threw the door open with ease and spun her way into the hallway, her smile wide. She almost felt like she could burst into a joyous song, until she saw a blue-armored human standing by her doorway, watching her with a bored stare. Luna paused in her motions, staring at Elias dumbly. Her habitual instincts took over, and she gave him a slight nod as she straightened to her normal posture.
"Good evening, Guardsman Bright."
He returned the nod, and Luna noticed a small white object tucked beneath his helmet.
"Evening, Princess."
The two stared silently at each other. Though he clearly noticed her attire, Luna suspected that he was remaining quiet on it for his own personal sake. She sniffed, sticking her nose in the air.
"You do not have to remain silent on my accord, Guardsman. Feel free to comment on my dress as much as you like. You cannot offend me."
Elias raised an eyebrow. his eyes searching over her quickly before meeting her eyes again.
What's are they coming about, princess? You look like you just woke up. It's hearth-warming eve and, well, you're a princess. You can wear whatever you like in the house as far as I see it.
Luna felt herself blush in embarrassment.
Or maybe he was remaining silent out of kindness.
Luna thought to herself. She didn't know why she jumped to the irrationally negative thought of Elias's character. He had proven that he was a kind individual more than once, though he had an odd way of demonstrating that kindness. Luna ran her slipper hoof in the carpet for a moment before she met his eyes again.
Why are you here, guardsman?
Luna asked.
You have this evening as well as the next off.
Elias nodded.
That I do, but I have nothing better to do, and sitting in an empty room alone didn't have a lot of appeal, so I decided to just do my regular job to occupy the time.
Luna frowned.
I would have imagined Bookbinder and Night Flash would invite you to stay with them for hearthwarming. They seemed most excited to be with you.
Elias scratched his nose.
They offered, but I turned them down. I didn't want to burden on their holiday, so I told them I would be fine here. It's not a big deal.
Luna's frown deepened when she saw the lie in his eyes. Even he did not believe the words coming from his mouth.
That is not truth, guardsman. At least, not the whole truth. Where is the rest?
Elias's eyes met hers for a brief moment, and Luna saw sadness in those brilliant blue eyes. He sighed and looked at his feet.
We fought about it a few days ago, and started over some little nothing. It should have stayed nothing, but it didn't.
What was it about?
Luna asked. Elias snorted, waving his hand around them.
About staying with them for hearthwarming, I told Bookbinder I didn't want to be a burden, and that I was concerned about what her family would think about me. She responded by telling me I wasn't a burden, and that her parents would like me just fine.
He snorted again.
I think that turning my argument on its head just pissed me off, because I did the same thing right back. I told her that her parents would likely hate me, so that I would ruin the holiday for everyone. After that, she accused me of acting like a child, and it got worse from there.
I don't know when we started yelling, but we just kept going and going. Said some stuff, I said nastier stuff back, and we just... Elias fell silent, scratching at his nose with his thumb. He looked at Luna again, then sighed. Let's just say we didn't leave on good terms. I figured out pretty quickly that I was in the wrong, so I tried to catch up to her and apologize, but then it was too late for my shift, and Nightshade got on my case. His eyes burned with regret.
And then she was gone. She and Night Flash slipped away, taking a few extra days of leave.
I haven't talked to either since. I'm not even sure if they would want to talk to me if we had the chance. Luna was frozen with horror. She had no idea what to say. This wasn't supposed to be happening, and it especially wasn't supposed to be happening now. It was Hearthwarming's Eve. Elias's nostrils flared and he straightened slightly, looking at Luna with his eyes filled with simmering anger. She had no doubt that said anger was directed inwardly.
It doesn't matter,
Elias said.
I'll figure this out in time. Worst comes to worst.
He paused, shaking his head as he slumped again.
Then it comes to it. I'm not going to hold those two back because of something stupid like my feelings.
He snorted in disgust, then cleared his throat.
Either way, I'll be out of your hair, princess. I was just standing guard here till you got up, so now I'm thinking I'm gonna go walk outside. Maybe I can go park myself outside the front gates for a while, watch the snow fall.
He pulled the flask from his belt, unscrewing the top quickly as he took a swig. Elias shuddered briefly as he stared at the flask.
Damn, that got stronger with the trip. Good stuff.
He glanced up, meeting Luna's eyes, as if he had just realized the pony was there. He grunted sheepishly, then offered the flask to her.
Want some, princess? That's authentic American whiskey right there.
Luna took the offered flask, glancing at it cautiously before she shrugged and took a sip. The liquid inside tasting something akin to changeling blood, and it burned the entire length of her throat as she struggled not to throw it up. The look of disgust was clear on her face, because Elias chuckled.
Burns, right? Found that at some rich guy's place 3 years ago. A solid 180 proof, if I remember correctly. Anything stronger, and it's like drinking rubbing alcohol.
Luna looked at the flask with distaste, and she floated it back to Elias's waiting hand.
That is most foul, guardsman. I cannot imagine it is good for you.
Elias shrugged as he screwed the top back on. He slipped it into his belt. Maybe not, but it does its job. Makes you feel a bit warmer and a lot happier. It's all it needs to be. Luna scoffed.
Clearly, you have not drunken some of the spirits my ponies have created in Equestria's long history. The apple cider is something that ponies would kill for if they were just a tad more violent. There is never enough, even for a princess.
Elias shrugged again. Then I'll save everyone the trouble. Besides, it's not like I can buy anything alcoholic. Not for a few years at least. That drinking age of yours is a bit too high for my taste. Luna looked at him with narrowed eyes.
That is right, you are not of age. I could have you imprisoned for having that foul substance.
Elias smiled. I'll tell the guard on duty. I wouldn't hold your breath, though. He's got a real soft spot for cigarettes. He tapped the small white object behind his ear. Luna leaned in slightly to look at it properly and confirmed that yes, it was indeed a smoking device, another thing that had been banned in her long absence. Not that she ever had been a particular fan of that nasty habit anyways. Elias sighed and his smile fell as Luna continued to glare at his vices. Princess, it'll all be gone by the end of today. I've been saving everything I had left for a special occasion. Tonight's gonna be that occasion. I'll have nothing left by the sunrise. He let out a single wet cough, and Elias scowled as he cleared his throat. Luna took a step back. The man looked like a llama that wanted to spit. He didn't, however, and much to Luna's disgust, he swallowed whatever was clogging his throat. His eyes flickered to Luna, then back to the ground. Sorry, princess. I'm taking up your day for nothing. I'm gonna move on if you don't mind. Luna nodded silently, and the human pushed off the wall, trudging his way down the hallway. He gave her a small wave as he turned the corner, and then he was gone, leaving Luna alone and dazed. What should she do? A glance into her room showed that only a few minutes had passed, cutting into her solitary coffee time. But should she pursue the human? Was it better to let him brood? Another glance at the clock made her calculate how much time remained until the elements would arrive. If he was truly going to the front gate, then he would likely get drafted into helping them inside. She could fulfill her hearth-warming plans until then, and after that, she could invite him inside to warm himself by the fire. At the very least, he would be fed and warm, and that would be enough, even if he did not join in on hearth-warming pile. Luna snored softly and smiled as she closed her bedroom door. Or maybe she would force him to act as the base for the pile, and they could smother him with love and attention. That would force the human to be happy. Luna smiled as she imagined it, the plan solidifying as she trotted to the kitchens. Her good mood returned in full. She would show him, and then she would drag his soon-to-be parents back as well so that they could join in, smothering the human with love. That would be a good hearth-warming for all, just as it should be. Elias blew air into his hands as he tried to keep his body tight. It should have had the effect of keeping him warmer, but the wind howling as it was, it didn't really help. The sun had set over an hour ago, and Elias had stopped checking the time when he found out that it was almost as frozen as he was. The snow was falling swiftly, already climbing up to his toes. He had smoked through one cigarette, and he was fast working on the second. The snow-covered streets still had the occasional pony running by, usually with a gift or two suspended in aura, or tucked carefully on their back as they sprinted to and fro. Elias did his best to find something to watch, but as the wind grew worse, he found himself pacing before the gate more often than not. He was lucky that part of his ancestry was Norse, because otherwise his exposed legs might have just frozen off. He eyed the barrel that would provide him with warmth, if he could figure out how to get the damn thing started. It had to be a magic thing, because his lighter did nothing to the fuel that sat in the brazier. The alchemated sticks and logs sat unwilling or unable to light, and so unable to give off light and warmth. He only minded half of that. While he really wanted to go inside to get warm, he knew Luna was up and trying to act normal, and he didn't want to interrupt. He had put no thought into what the princess might be doing for hearth-warming. While he had no interest in the holiday, nor its human surrogate, it didn't mean that he had to ruin it for others, especially not a pair of ponies that had helped him out through some rough spots. If nothing else, he could fall back on his wasteland code to guide him, and it said that favors should always be repaid. That meant if they scratched his back, he would keep out of their way and be bitter elsewhere. Even if elsewhere was a freezing hellscape with a white evil raining from the sky and down his shirt. Elias resisted the urge to rip the cloak off his body to shake the snow loose again. He knew it would only make the issue worse, but the urge was still there, and his hands twitched more than once to rip off the worthless piece of cloth. A gust of wind wiped away his idea as he shivered. Slipping his shield over his back, with the peeler returned to its sheath, Elias ducked into one of the guard boxes, taking temporary shelter from the wind as he held his cigarette to take a swig from his flask. It was nearly empty. He had practically drained it on his walk to the gate, and now he was going to finish. If for nothing else, he wanted a mild buzz to wait out the rest of the evening. Only a group of fast-approaching voices stopped him from downing the rest of the flask in one go. Elias let a swallow's worth fall back as he wiped his face, placing a cigarette between his lips once more as he peeked out of the guard box. Squinting into the snow, Elias found a group of well-lit ponies trotting happily towards the castle. Further squinting also noted a small creature carrying a stack of luggage as tall as Elias was. So the human sighed, screwing his flask tight as he tucked into his belt and walked forward. "Anything I can help you ladies with?" Elias said, his voice loud enough to cut through the whistling of the wind. All six stopped suddenly, with their seventh running into somebody's rump, sending the luggage to the ground, including a few bags that slid to Elias's feet as he moved forward, scooping up a couple of bags as the lizard boy got to his feet. Once he realized he wasn't a pony helping him, the lizard boy stared at him in shock as well. One of the ponies he recognized, however, so Elias squinted at her and gave her a small wave as he bent over to grab another bag. "Evening, Twilight," he said gruffly, struggling slightly as he lifted the bag that felt like it was holding an entire couch in it. The purple unicorn in question started from her stunned state and smiled widely.
Hey, Elias. You're looking better.
The human grunted as he slung a bag over his shoulder. "Just what I get for eating 3 meals a day. Back for more about Earth?" Twilight's eyes lit up for a moment, and then she almost nodded, and then she drooped slightly.
No, we're here for Princess Celestia's Hearth's warming party.
She blinked for a moment as Elias snagged another bag from the snow.
Wait, why do I sound so sad about that? I'm here for Princess Celestia's Hearth's warming party.
She said cheerfully.
Though I'm kind of surprised that you're here, Elias. I thought the princesses gave the guard off for Hearth's warming.
Elias nodded as he swiped the last bag from the ground. With Twilight talking to him, the rest of the ponies seemed to lose their nervousness, though one of them was staring at him like he just ate their dog, while two of them, an orange one and a blue one, looked like they wanted to pick a fight. One was staring at him in a strange manner that he didn't recognize, which caused the lizard boy to eye him with jealousy. Finally, a vaguely familiar-looking pink pony looked like she was going to jump him. With all their luggage in his hand, however, Elias doubted that was going to happen. Elias nodded towards the gatehouse, in which they began walking inside, with the chatter resuming quietly behind him as Elias talked to Twilight. "They did, but I don't have anything better to do, so I'm working out. Might as well." Twilight frowned.
You haven't made any friends to celebrate Hearth's warming with?
Elias shifted the weight in his hand so that he could toss the cigarette that had reached the filter. He made sure to flick the ember-ridden thing into a snowbank. He sniffed and rubbed his nose before he shifted the luggage back. "From what I read, Hearth's warming is about family, and I didn't want to impose on anyone, so I stayed here. If I'd known about the party and all that, I'd probably left to find a bench to sleep on or something. It would be cold, but hey, I'd live. Probably," he kept to himself. Twilight's frown remained unwavering.
I mean, technically you're right, but Hearth's warming can be more than just about family. After all, I brought all of my friends with me to celebrate.
Elias eyed the group and snorted. "Maybe, but tell me, are they just your friends, or are they more than that? Can you honestly tell me you don't care for them just a little bit more than friends?" Twilight opened her mouth to respond, but then she stopped. Her frown returned, as she remained in thought all the way up to the castle doors. Elias easily shoved them open with his shoulders, holding the door so that everyone could get inside. The entryway was lit, but unoccupied. Elias had no doubt that the ponies knew where they needed to be, so he set down the luggage to the side of the door, leaving it ajar so that he could exit the snow once more. Twilight was still frowning in thought, and she sighed loudly.
Wow. I can't believe one little sentence stumped me so well. I tried to compare my relationships with Princess Celestia, Princess Luna, all my friends, and Spike, and I think I have an answer.
She looked at Elias, who was relishing the interior heat for a moment.
I guess you're absolutely right, Elias. I do value my friends more than just being friendly. I'm sorry that you haven't found any pony like that.
Elias shrugged as he tried to keep his eternal pain from his face. Don't worry about it. I'm fine alone. It's 2 days. I think I can make do. The white unicorn with the purple mane who was giving him a strange look suddenly got far too close.
Nonsense, darling.
She said with a strange accent.
I am more than sure that the princesses wouldn't mind if we brought such a strong, capable stallion such as yourself to our little party.
The unicorn winked at him, and it briefly occurred to Elias what was happening.
I know I certainly wouldn't mind being good friends with one as muscular as yourself.
Her eyes drifted up and down his body as she spoke, and if Elias was a more thoughtful man, he might have cared. Elias snorted and took a step away from the pony. Now, I'm no expert on pony culture, but I think it's a little more than weird for somebody to be hitting on a 19-year-old, so I'm just going to be going back outside, he said, pointing a thumb at the still open door, leaking heat and light into the cold night. The unicorn blanched visibly, and with her mouth flapped as she tried to stammer a response. The orange and blue ponies both snickered, however, and the lizard, which Elias imagined was one of the names Spike, looked relieved. What he said about his age, Elias didn't know, and he didn't particularly care. The encounter was already beginning to wear thin, and he was warm enough to survive outside for a little longer. Seeing the awkward lull in conversation as an opportunity, Elias made his way towards the open doors, slipping outside just as a tall white form appeared at the top of the staircase. He slipped the door quietly as he heard a chorus of greetings and laughter as the princess entered the foyer. He made sure the door jammed closed silently before he began trudging back to his guard box. The wind seemed to roar in his ears as he walked up, and Elias felt a particularly nasty chill race down his spine as he tugged the clothes tighter around his chest.
Princess Celestia!
Twilight called out as she raced to embrace her mentor. Luna frowned as she watched the door slip closed. Elias had outmaneuvered her without even trying. He had acted on her prediction to help the elements inside, but as she and her sister entered the front hall, he had steadily disappeared, sliding out of the open door to the frigid outside. Luna was fairly sure that Celestia hadn't even noticed the human, and she thought it was unlikely that any of the elements would discuss him for long once the party truly got underway. The opportunity to drag him inside the warmth and cuddles that came and went, and Luna had no idea how to act upon her instinct to help him now.
Luna, are you all right?
Celestia asked, her voice worried. Luna shook herself from her stupor and looked around to find everyone staring at her. She smiled weakly.
Yes, Tia, I am quite all right. Just thinking.
Celestia tutted and dragged Luna into a warm embrace.
Now, Luna, you know better than to be thinking about your duties at a time like this. It's Hearth's warming, after all.
Luna tried to pull away from her older sister, but quickly found herself being hugged by Twilight and her friends as well. She blushed slightly, then accepted her fate as she rubbed against her sister's chest fluff. Though she felt much more relaxed, a small thought wriggled at the back of her mind that Elias would be experiencing this, and that she should be sharing in this wondrous companionship she was enjoying. If she wanted to solve the problem, however, she needed to make sure nobody was worried about her. Luna pulled away from the hug with a smile. She waved her horn and all the luggage stacked in the entryway disappeared, teleported to their respective suites.
Come,
She proclaimed, trotting towards the prepared party room.
there is much celebrating that needs doing. We have made many baked goods.
Everyone gave a cheer, and they all began to chatter as they walked towards the party. Luna cast one last glance at the sealed doors, her mind working on a method to get Elias into position for maximum love and friendship. Come on, you fucking thing, Elias hissed. You worked twice tonight, and you can work one more time. It'll be the last one, I swear. Then you can be as broken as you like. The lighter remained dead in his numb fingers, oblivious to Elias's bargaining. It had steadily gotten colder since he went outside. The wind seemed to howl in his ears, and Elias regretted not being able to be more prepared. He had no hat to cover his head, no pants or stockings to cover his legs, and the cloak seemed thinner and thinner with each gust of wind. Elias growled as the flint tore away a piece of thumb flesh as he tried to light it. Anger rose hot in his mind, and Elias slammed the worthless lighter into the equally worthless brazier. The unlit cigarette quickly followed, all unlit, all worthless. Elias wiped away some of the ice that had crusted on his beard. Months of not shaving had netted him a fully grown face of hair. Not that it kept him any warmer. Elias briefly considered going inside to brood in his room, but after checking his watch to find that it had only been past 10, he decided he could wait out the cold for a little while longer. Elias searched the dark streets before him for something to hate, but quickly found nothing. The streets seemed calm, almost peaceful. There were no more last-minute shoppers, no ponies at all, really. Even in the land of magic and rainbows, Elias had expected at least one lonely soul to be wandering like himself, but there were none. Each door in sight was closed, and each window a single candle sat, giving the only light on the pitch-black night. Elias let out a pained gasp as everything seemed to slow. The wind died down, going from a raging howl to a non-existent whisper. The snow still fell, but instead of the tiny flakes that found their way into his eyes, large, graceful flakes descended from the sky. They soared softly through the air, and Elias poked his head out of the guard box to get a better look. In a childlike sense of wonder, Elias looked up to the sky, seeing something he had only ever read about. He couldn't remember ever willingly going outside in the snow, and he certainly never remembered it looking like this. Like a million stars, the snow fell, glinting softly off the candles in every window. It shouldn't have been enough light, but for once, Elias could see in the dark. Everything seemed crystal clear, like it was by design. Elias stuck out his tongue, catching a flake or two. His breath produced a cloud in the dark air, and Elias chuckled softly as he watched it dissipate. The cold seemed distant now. Everything felt rather distant. A strange feeling twinged in Elias's chest, an extremely unfamiliar one. Elias let out a cough, trying to dislodge whatever was stuck in his throat. But when it didn't fade away, he attributed it to something else. Elias then tried pacing, thinking perhaps it was the result of the cold air that seemed to burn his nose with every breath. That didn't help either. If anything, the feeling grew stronger, creating an unknown urge. Elias leaned against the castle wall, blowing clouds of fog into the air, and he watched with fascination as they faded away. He wondered briefly what it felt like, to simply dissipate, to fade into nothing. Elias smiled at the thought, then frowned. His mind was quiet, yet it felt at conflict with itself, as if two powers were warring for control. Elias ignored it as another symptom of exposure. The thought of going back inside popped up once more, quickly countered by the wish to not disturb the hearth-warming party that was likely shining brightly through one of the castle windows. Elias wandered over to the brazier, blowing into his hands to get them to uncurl enough to grab his lighter and cigarette. This time, the lighter came on with a second flick, and Elias was able to light the cigarette with ease. He tucked the lighter back into his belt as he took a long pull on the cigarette, staring blankly into the dark. The quiet was deafening. Elias felt like it didn't have to be. Sure, the calm darkness was beautiful, but there were some other things that could be beautiful too. Song, for one. Elias blinked as a warm rush of pleasant memories filtered across his mind. Each one involved a song that came to mind. Children's songs to teach the ABCs, drinking songs to celebrate great victories, shoddily written bardic songs from a married couple who wanted to start up a circus. A hell of a feat for post-apocalypse, but more to them. One song seemed to stand out though. A Christmas song. Normally Elias would drive such a disgusting thing as far from his mind as possible. This had always been a dark time of the year. Whether it was called Christmas or hearth-warming, Elias should hate it. But the song was slowly warming forward in his thoughts and was one of the better times, when he still had everything he wanted in life. Peace, a family, friends, his innocence. A time when blood didn't have to be shed, when he could smile and laugh without having to worry about the ever-present enemy that threatened to take everything away. It was a time when he was young, when his sisters were young, and when his dad wasn't bitter at his lot in life, and when his mother smiled day after day, always happy, always a shining spot in his life. Elias felt his chest tighten as he realized that he wouldn't find that sensation again. He had destroyed the opportunity. He had hurt Bookbinder irreparably, had said words that when spoken could never be taken back and could only fester as regret, weighing down on an already laden heart. Elias felt his legs weaken, and he slumped against the wall. The half-smoked cigarette dangled precariously from his lips, and only a last-second burst of energy caught it before it could fall into the snow. Then Elias decided to let it fall anyway. He didn't want it. Didn't want anything except to sleep. He was done. He had no reason to push on, no motivation to continue fighting for his own existence. After all, it was all because of Nightflash and Bookbinder that he had friends at all. And with them gone, the rest of his friends would likely follow. He was alone again, and the feeling cut him to the core. Desperation and a sense of loss crept over him, and Elias wanted to do nothing more than collapse, to let the snow claim him. It would make the night completely silent. Silent night. Elias smirked as the old song rose to his mind. The feeling in his chest returned with renewed vigor. Shoving away the thoughts of desperation, Elias straightened from his slump, brushing the ice from his beard as he leaned against the castle wall, blowing a cloud into the night sky. How did that song go again? He could vaguely remember the tune, but the words were all lost to time. Elias was fairly sure he could remember the first line, though.
Silent night, Elias said more than sang. He snorted at the sound of his voice. To say it sounded rough was an understatement, but the feeling in his chest seemed to want him to continue. So continue he did. The lyrics for the second line popped into his head as if somebody was feeding him the words. Holy night, Elias sang. Elias spat out a fat glob of phlegm as he tried to clear his throat. It was getting there. Elias swore he could hear bells. Maybe it was just the ringing in his ears. He paused, looked around to see if anyone was watching him make a fool of himself, but upon finding nobody, Elias shrugged and began to pace as the song rose in his mind, and he continued to sing, his voice growing stronger with every word. Luna smiled widely as Applejack and Rainbow Dash raced to chug their mugs in the cider. She and Pinkie Pie had a running pool of who would be victorious, and while the party pony had put her bits on the blue Pegasus, Luna was more than confident that the pony with the apple in her name could down the apple cider the fastest. She grinned with savage delight as Applejack slammed down another mug, scooping up one of the next at the same movement as she began to pump it back.
Come on, Dashy!
Pinkie cheered.
Gummy needs a new pair of slippers.
Rainbow Dash redoubled her efforts, slamming down her own mug as she began chugging rapidly at the second. Luna watched in horror as she caught up with Applejack with ease, the two resuming their neck-and-neck race. Luna growled at the farm pony.
Do not fare, Applejack. A happy princess could do much to help a simple farmer expand her crop. There are many ancient spells meant to increase crop yields, and these methods have been lost to the ages. They could be granted, however, to a certain pony who won their princess a large sum of bits.
Applejack increased her efforts as well, taking the lead once more as she moved on to the next mug. Luna eyed them carefully. 3 left. If she could motivate the farm pony a little more, the victory and the bits would be hers. The money was of import to her. That, and Luna just really wanted to win. She had been eyeing a certain set of stockings during her nightly wanderings, and she wanted to buy them strictly off the books. She did not need Celestia teasing her for a comfortable but quite provocative purchase. The stockings were the most lovely shade of red, though, and the lace at the top, the way they would hug her thighs. Luna tried to erase the blush that had crept to her face as she focused on motivating her drinking champion. She opened her mouth to give the farmer more incentive. Then, as if appearing from nowhere, Luna felt a familiar twinge in her chest. The game was suddenly forgotten, and her head swiveled towards the window as her ears strained to find the trace of the song being sung. Luna sprang to her feet, distracting Applejack as Rainbow Dash secured the victory. She and Pinkie cheered loudly, and Luna teleported the bag of bits to her side of the table without a second thought or moment of protest as she began trotting towards the window, searching in the snow for a sign of the source of the song. It was low in intensity, but it still felt powerful, as if it was struggling against another force. The song was beginning to swell, and Luna had an idea who was the source of the conflict. She stared out the window intently as she searched, looking for a sign of light that would lead her to her human. Celestia was quickly at her side, followed by most of the Twilight's friends.
Is something wrong, Luna?
Celestia asked, her voice tinged with concern. Luna frowned deeply as a nasty gust of wind brushed against the glass. She looked at the assembled ponies.
Elias, the guard that assisted you inside. Did he give any indication of where he was going?
Twilight shook her head.
Not really. He just said he was going back outside and then left.
Celestia looked between the two.
Elias is here? Why? He should have had Hearth swarming off with the rest of our guards.
Luna nodded.
He decided to conduct his normal duties. The ponies I would have thought would take him home evidently fought with him over the very subject. He believes that he has permanently alienated them, and is therefore alone tonight. It would seem it is causing a measure of conflict within the man, and he has managed to tap into the ambience of song. I merely wish to ensure he is not meeting his death as we speak.
It is mighty chilly out there.
Applejack said.
And he looked a bit worse for wear, if you don't mind me saying. He didn't have no meat on his bones, and if I saw right, he didn't have no fur neither.
Luna nodded as she let the sensation of her chest guide her vision. Clearly she was the one connected to the human song, so she could be able to target his position by testing where the magic was the strongest. Only when she faced the gatehouse did it reach its peak. If she had less control, she might have begun singing right there, but the unfamiliarity of the song lyrics, so organized and impersonal, at least for her, let Luna remain in control enough to speak her next words as she prepared a minor teleportation spell.
I shall not be long, and I will not require assistance. Please, return to your merriment. I shall send for help if I need it.
And then she disappeared, reappearing just outside the window. She narrowed her eyes to keep the snow out as she flapped violently to stay in the air. When the ice drove her to the ground, Luna scanned the air, looking for the telltale signs of hostile power. The average snowfall, no matter how cold, could not drive an alicorn from flight. It took her a few moments, but she found the red eyes just as the Wendigo let out a howl split near the peaceful sky. No pony could hear it besides herself and its potential food source. Luna said a praise of thanks to the keepers for forcing song magic into Elias as she began to fight her way through the growing snowdrifts. She needed to be quick. If she didn't reach the human before the song ended, the Wendigo could sweep away what little harmony had found his way into his heart, and the beast would likely kill him. To make the magic in the air more powerful, Luna let her voice join in. The solo became a duet, and the air seemed to still as she pushed forward. Luna ignored the pained howls of the Wendigo as she ran. She needed to reach him. She held her head high, let her strong vocal cords sing high into the night, her tones perfect as she moved. Elias was surprised when the bells changed to become a second voice. Maybe it was the cold seeping to his bones, but Elias felt mesmerized by the sound. It sounded familiar and so wonderfully beautiful. It carried a haunting tone to it, and each note was sung in perfect key to harmonize with his singing. Whoever she was, Elias felt that he really wanted to meet her face to face. By comparison, his voice sounded rough, tripping and stumbling over the tones as he tried his best to keep the lyrics in his head. The song was human, damn it. Why did it feel like his mind was freezing every other line? It didn't matter now. He didn't know the entire song, and the lyrics in his head seemed to repeat the first verse anyways, so he started from the beginning. Silent night. Elias felt a long shiver play down his body. His air and his lungs seemed to freeze as he struggled to continue. Was it getting colder? Elias didn't know, and he felt content to try and sit down to huddle for warmth. The thought of going inside never even crossed his mind as he began to freeze. Holy... Elias felt his teeth chatter, biting away the second half of the lyric. The music seemed to be hanging by a thread in the air, and the cold crept in. Elias closed his eyes and tried to breathe warmth into his hands. It was so cold. Elias could swear he heard wolves howling. The ice crept up his legs, the snow piled on his quivering shoulders. For a brief moment, Elias felt like he was at death's door, and welcomed the sensation. That is, until she arrived. He felt her first, her very presence stopping the snowfall, bringing with it warmth and security. Elias looked back from her beneath his frozen helmet, shivering violently as he struggled to keep breathing. Luna smiled sadly at him as the angelic voice came from her mouth. She sang sweetly. The chill seemed to ease, and Elias found warm air in his lungs once more. Though he still shivered, he was able to continue as the lyrics rose again in his mind. Round yon virgin, mother and child. Luna's smile widened as she continued. The wind howled in his ears, and Elias curled tighter into his ball. The song hung in the air again, and Elias felt cold touch his heart. A gasp of pain escaped his chest as the muscle began to palpitate. Only a soft touch on his shoulder brought Elias back from the brink. Then Elias felt that it was supposed to be his turn. Luna sang the next lyric for him. She sang brightly, her hoof extended towards him. Sleep in heavenly peace. Elias finished softly, his voice just above a whisper. The air seemed to return to normal as he finished, and the howling behind the wind died. Elias took a chilling breath and promptly passed out against the alicorn to his left. Luna let out a long sigh as she watched the human fall into unconsciousness. The Wendigo had let out a spine-shattering howl as it lost its meal, but it vanished upon the completion of the song. As a result, Elias was still alive, but only barely. His armor and clothing were coated in a thin layer of ice, as was his facial hair. She would check him further once inside, but Luna suspected that the damage was severe. She went quickly after placing the human on her back, keeping him tucked safely beneath her wings. She hit the castle doors at a dead run, slamming them closed with a thud as she ran towards the nearest in-use fireplace. Another set of doors barred her path, and she slammed through as well. She eyed the fireplace in the party room briefly, then continued her run, opting to take Elias somewhere more private. If he woke up, he would cause issues if he continued to be inane and thought about being a burden. It would be better to nip the issue in the bud so that she could care for him swiftly and efficiently. Her run was not fast enough, however, and Luna quickly found herself being hounded by her sister in the elements, and they began to pelt her with questions. Unfortunately, her sister decided to take that direction and block her from the door that would lead her to her bedroom.
My word, Luna. Where was he to end up in such a state?
Solus asked, her voice cutting through the myriad of inane questions.
Outside, by the gate.
Luna responded shortly, dipping around her sister.
A Wendigo has attempted to make a feast of the man's eternal strife. We should have continued the ancient hunt for the ugly beast. The blood of its kin on the castle steps would have kept it away.
Celestia waved for the elements to remain in place as she caught up with Luna, falling in beside her as they ran towards her room.
What is the source of such strife? You said he had conflict with his friends, but that shouldn't have been on a level to attract a Wendigo, especially not to the heart of Canterlot.
Luna threw open her door, casting a small fireball on her fireplace as she levitated the whirlwind of pillows and blankets onto the floor before it. She stripped away Elias's armor and weaponry as she laid the human down gently, tucking a thick blanket made of griffin feathers over his body. Luna frowned when the human didn't move at all, his face an abnormal pale, even for him.
I know not, sister, but I shall find out when he awakens. As it stands, he will likely be uncomfortable with the attentions of too many ponies. I have no wish to draw more Wendigos here, so I, and I alone, will nurse him to health.
Celestia gave her a light nuzzle, which Luna returned gratefully.
Are you sure?
Celestia asked.
Perhaps he just needs more friends to brighten his spirits. He knows Twilight well enough.
Luna shook her head and sighed.
Nay, he does not. I have gained much insight into how he thinks by observing him these past few months. And if I know the guardsman well enough, he will try to push even me away. In all likelihood, he will make some false claim about how he was fine, and how it was only a minor chill that could have stolen the life from his body.
Celestia smiled and rolled her eyes.
Sounds like some pony I know. Far too stubborn for her own good. Likes doing things her way. Sound familiar?
Luna snorted dismissively and waved a hoof.
Do not make light of me at this time, sister. You may poke your fun when I do not have to focus so on the guardsman's health.
Her tone softened as she looked at Celestia.
But could you bring some food? And check if we need company occasionally. I do not wish for this night to be ruined by events out of our control.
Celestia nodded.
Of course, Luna. I will check every hour. And I will tell Twilight and the girls that everything is fine. Elias merely fell asleep and grew ill. It will set them at ease, if nothing else.
Luna nodded.
Thank you, sister. Now, if you will excuse me, I shall check on his condition.
Celestia gave her one last squeeze before she left her room, shutting the door softly behind her. Luna sighed as she lifted the blanket away, scooting Elias a bit closer to the fire so he could warm up faster while she checked on him. Luna frowned at his soaking wet clothing, and with a wave of her horn, she burned all of it away. All of it. Luna flushed furiously as she checked his genitals for frostbite, and when she found none, Luna quickly covered them with a pillow. She took a few deep breaths to avoid collapsing from embarrassment, then she continued her checkup. His toes were largely black from frostbite, but a powerful healing spell brought them back to life. Luna was even pleased to see a few of them digits wiggle lightly as she checked them with her hooves, ensuring that the magic had done its job. Next came the hands, which were in a similar state. Luna repeated her procedure healing, and then checking the fingers to make sure they were fully healed. Luna then moved her inspection upward. Elias's face, while incredibly pale, was surprisingly free of frostbite, and she attributed it to the harmony magic that had found its way inside and then out again through his song. Luna briefly pondered that song as she checked the rest of his body for frostbite. It had clearly had significant meaning to Elias, as she had never heard anything of its likeness in all of her years. It had also been unlike a usual harmonious song. They were usually very specific and tense, directed directly at whatever strife was hidden deep in the singer's heart, yet Elias's had seemed to come from his head. It was almost as if it had been written beforehand, and then he had remembered, causing a reaction with Equestria's ambient magic when he began to sing.
She couldn't dismiss the idea as strange, as standard ambient magics had no effect on the human. Perhaps he had found an avenue to connect the human to the lifeblood of her ponies, but she could only test this theory with time. Elias groaned lightly as he stirred, his blue eyes gazing at her hazily. Princess? What? Luna resisted the urge to swipe him in the back of the head.
You fell unconscious while outside. I brought you to my bedroom to warm you up. You nearly froze to death.
Just as she predicted, Elias rolled over and tried to push himself up. You didn't need to do that, Elias said through his shivers. It wasn't even that cold out. Luna watched calmly as he got to his feet, and he began looking towards the door. Luna immediately lifted him into the air. He grunted heavily as she laid him back down on the rug in front of the fire. She then grabbed another thick black blanket from her bed and draped it over the human. Finally, she resettled his temporary pillow bed, fluffing them out as she laid him down. Elias remained silent, and Luna was forced to suppress a giggle as he pulled the blanket tighter around his body. Normally he seemed so collected, even when in great pain, yet now the human looked positively adorable as he shivered. He inched himself towards the fire, holding his pale hands towards the flame. Luna watched with fascination as they slowly uncurled as he warmed the digits up. Even with the added heat and blankets, the human was still shivering too much, so Luna did the only thing she could think of to warm his body up faster. Luna moved silently, sitting behind the human, her fur only inches away from his covered back. She remained unnoticed as the human focused on the fire. With a small push magic, coupled with her large wings, she dragged Elias to her chest, making sure that every part of his freezing body was covered with her warm, fuzzy one. For a brief moment, he didn't protest, simply sighing as her plush chest fluff pressed against his back. The moment ended as he warmed up, however, and Elias tried to squirm away. Princess, I don't think this is necessary, he said between chatters. I'll be fine in a minute. Luna tightened her wings around his body, pinning the man's arms to his chest. Elias stopped moving, and for a second, Luna thought he had simply accepted his fate to be snuggled to warmth and happiness. She then heard a small sob. Elias pranced against her, burying his face in her chest fur as he cried. Her instincts took over, and Luna wrapped her hose around the man. She stroked his hair like she had seen Bookbinder do, and she rocked him back and forth, trying to comfort him. She had meant it as a light, playful statement, and had expected the usual bitter, almost angry reply. Not this. Luna was at a loss to what to say, of how to comfort him. The brief idea to joke about catching him singing popped into her mind, but she shoved it away. It would only make the situation worse. This was clearly a moment of weakness for the man, and mocking him in a way that would further damage his pride would drive him away from her, not closer. Thinking of nothing better, Luna just silently rocked the man back and forth, levitating a few more blankets and pillows around him for comfort. She constructed a fortress of soft things that she hoped would bring the man comfort. It took some time, but eventually his tears slowed, and Elias once again attempted to pull away. Luna didn't let him free, instead opening her wings so she could lay her head on top of his in an attempt to calm him down. As she continued to softly rock the human, Luna couldn't help but to smell his hair. While nowhere near as sweet-smelling as a pony, it had its own positive qualities. Perhaps she had a bias for her personal experiences with Elias, but it was almost like she could smell his strength, as well as the intense pain he kept below the surface. It had a bite of salt, while the sadness of his tears seemed a bit sweeter. She could even detect a bit of iron, no doubt some long-healed injury. Luna found that she really enjoyed the smell, but wished it stemmed from happiness rather than eternal pain. Luna cleared her throat softly, not letting Elias wriggle free as she spoke.
Elias, while I respect your privacy, I think you would feel better if you spoke of what is truly troubling you. This is not the result of a simple argument, and I do not wish to see you hurting so on Hearth's warming eve.
She was rather surprised when he answered immediately. She had expected to have to pry something from him. I have this horrible feeling inside me, Princess, Elias said numbly, staring blankly at the fire. You said I could have died, but the more I think about it, the more that I'm thinking that I was trying to. I tried to kill myself by exposure tonight. The words made Luna stiffen as a chill ran down her spine. It was a nasty admission, and Luna felt her eyes drift towards the window, where the wind began to howl loudly. She pulled the human a little tighter against her chest. The air seemed to grow colder.
Why, Elias?
Luna asked as she stroked the fire, driving the orange flames higher.
I had thought things were getting better for you. Until tonight, you have seemed almost happy. Especially when you are with Night Flash and Bookbinder. What could you have done to bring you so low?
Elias sniffled and he began to try to scoot away. Luna swatted the back of his head and dragged him close again.
Cease your senseless struggles and answer the question, guardsman.
Luna said irritably. She felt the human shiver, and Luna winced internally as she rubbed his back softly, switching tactics.
Please, Elias. More than you know has happened this night, and you cannot bottle these emotions away. They are eating at you, even I can see that. Speak. It will help.
Elias sniffled again. It's all been a lie, Princess. I've been putting on a brave face for the sake of everyone around me, but things haven't been getting better. They've been getting worse. A trace of a whimper crept into his voice. I love Bookbinder and Night Flash to death, but maybe that's the problem. I feel like I haven't been in control, and my night terrors have been getting steadily worse. I used to have one a night, but for the past 3 weeks, I've been getting 3 or 4 every single time I go to sleep. It doesn't matter how tired I get or who's beside me, it doesn't help. He clenched his fist as he extended an arm at the fire. And I know why. It's because I know what's going to happen, and I'd rather die than see it again. Luna stroked his hair.
What is going to happen, Elias? What could possibly drive you to these lengths to escape it?
Elias remained silent, shaking his head as he stared at the fire with dead eyes. Luna sighed and shifted her questioning.
Is it still the same reoccurring night terror?
No, he whispered softly in reply. He sounded like he was on the verge of crying again. Luna rubbed his back as she laid long ways beside him, covering his torso with her wing as she laid her head on his neck.
Tell me, what new threat haunts your dreams?
She felt Elias curl in on himself, but he still answered, his voice choked with pain. It's the same setting, the same motions, but all the faces, they changed. I don't see my old friends anymore. I don't hear their screams.
Then who?
Luna replied simply. Elias whimpered softly. Night Flash, Bookbinder, Scarlet, Scalpel, Chaser, Nightshade. He paused as if holding something back. Luna gently prodded him, whispering in his ear. He refused to look at her. You, he said softly. Luna was surprised when he began to cry again. Once more, she had no words. Had not thought they were even close. It was by his own declaration that they were not friends. And Luna looked back through her recent memory to find a moment where Elias could have begun caring about her. She found little of note. A small chase over medicine, his assistance in scouting her castle, a scolding to 2 over his injuries, a note about his nudity. Luna smiled lightly at the memory of that day. It had been a series of highs and lows, but she found it a good memory nonetheless. Perhaps it was then, or perhaps it was the professional relationship they had established, a rock of calmness in his life. She was never threatened, rarely involved with him really, but she was always there, ready to step in if she needed to push the human back on track. Night after night, when he stood guard by her bedroom, by her throne, and even by her side. Was that it? He valued her for being a constant in his life? Elias shook himself from his crying, and bitter anger slipped into his tone as he spoke. You and everyone else I know dead in some violent, bloody manner. Dead in a ditch, with who to left to wash it all. His fist hit his chest with an angry thump. Me. Only me. The lone survivor once more. Then I die as well. A hole in my heart as I collapse in a puddle of my own pain and blood. He sniffed as Luna stroked his hair once more. I just wanted to go quietly. No screams of pain, no blood, no watching everyone I love and care about die. I wanted a quiet death. And tonight, I almost found one. Luna let out a deep sigh as she stared down at the human. Though he wouldn't look up, she could still see burning anger in his eyes.
Do you still want that death, Elias, tonight?
Elias shook his head. No, he replied. Because you made me think about how everyone else would feel. I was being a selfish coward tonight, trying to die in a cowardly manner. What kind of man would I have died as if you hadn't come out to save me? He shifted so that he could look up at Luna. Luna loved his blues of his eyes, so brilliant and shining. She did not love the agony she saw in them, and she silently made a vow to erase as much of that pain as possible. Could you imagine how Bookbinder would have felt if she stumbled upon my frozen corpse? The grief might kill her. Elias whimpered softly. She loves me that much, and I can't even go to her for help, for anything. Too much of a coward to let her be my mother. Too much of a coward to go with her for heartwarming. She's so much stronger than I am. Everyone is. I'm a pathetic coward. Luna felt a flash of anger at his self-deprecation.
Elias Bright, listen well to my words.
She said, her voice commanding his attention.
You are not weak. You are not a coward. This wallowing will not stand. I will not allow it. This talk shall end here. And if I must, I shall make it an order.
Her voice softened and she tried to make him relax against her once more.
You are strong, Elias. Stronger than you or any pony else knows. You are strong because you are so very young, and you have been alone for far too much of your life. It is only now that you are finding happiness in a stable, peaceful environment that you have become afraid.
Luna stroked his back, and she felt his muscles untense as her hoof ran across his bare flesh.
You have spent so much of your life in loss, Elias. I do not need an accounting of your past to see that much. Now that you have built yourself up again, you fear losing it all again. I understand, Elias, I truly do, but your fears are unjustified. Equestria is a land of peace, and pushing away your friends is not needed anymore. Maybe in the past, but here, now, you need these relationships, Elias. They help keep you strong.
Luna said, her chin on his shoulder.
I cannot make these feelings go away, Elias. Only you can do that. But please, if you ever have thoughts of this nature again, come to me. It does not matter the time of day nor what I am doing. I will make time for you.
Okay, Elias said softly. He sat in contemplative silence for a moment, staring at the fire. Luna stroked and petted him, seeking to make him as relaxed and calm as possible. As they sat in silence, Luna falsely believed he had drifted to sleep, but his voice was clear as he asked, Princess, do you believe in an afterlife? A poignant question to ask, but an easy one for her to answer.
Of course I do, Elias. All ponies, all creatures do. Do you not?
Elias shrugged. I don't know. Humans have nothing but stories to go on. No magic, no evidence of existence of anything beyond what we can see and touch. The sun and moon move on their own. Nature is wild and requires a fist to be tamed. Humans are warriors, and the environment was just another enemy for us to conquer. When we succeeded, we turned on each other. A million cultures, all with different views of what happens after death. Reincarnation, heaven, hell, a different word in every language for each. He snorted softly. I know about so many different afterlives, I'm not sure if any of them are real. And part of me doesn't even want any of them to be. Luna shifted slightly so that Elias's legs were intertwined with hers. If the human noticed, he did not shift to avoid her. Luna felt a small smile creep across her face as her fur brushed against his lightly haired legs. He couldn't escape with pinned legs, and if she could convince him to keep talking, perhaps she could convince him to join a larger snuggle pile.
Would you like to hear of our afterlife? Perhaps it would set your mind at ease.
Elias shrugged again, remaining vocally silent. Luna took it as a yes.
For all of the sentient creatures in Equus, death is merely a journey. One gives up their mortal body and travels to the court of the Keepers of Harmony. Here their soul is judged according to the virtues of the Keepers, and they are given one of 3 paths. For those who lived their lives by virtue, they will go to the verdant fields. Here they are happy for all eternity, reunited with old friends and family. while also free to make an infinite number of new friends. The sun always shines, and the night sky is always beautiful.
So, it's heaven, Elias said, nodding. And this is real? You have proof? Luna stared into the fireplace as she remembered the ages-old memory.
My sister and I went together, becoming alicorns so that we could watch and grow our kingdom into a place of joyous harmony across the millennia. As was our duty, just as important as raising the celestial bodies. I am a princess for a reason, you know.
Elias snorted, and Luna moved on.
The second path is a middle ground, for those who may have lived a dishonorable life, but not necessarily an evil one. These souls can attempt to gain entry to the verdant fields via trial, or they can plead with the keepers for a second chance. They are allowed to reincarnate, memoryless, and try their life once again.
Luna checked to ensure Elias was still listening and found him watching her intently. She continued.
Most succeed on this second chance, and they gain immediate entrance to the verdant fields upon their second death. It is just short of a compulsion to do good, and so they go through their life living in harmony, and are justly rewarded.
Elias nodded in silence. And what about evil people? What about the ones who are beyond redemption? Luna could already see what he was trying to get at. She sighed and shook her head.
Elias, you aren't.
That's not for you to decide, he snapped. What happens? Luna looked at the human sadly, but continued.
For those beyond redemption, their souls are imprisoned within Tartarus, spending an eternity alone in a cage. They are routinely visited and punished by the keepers for their evil acts.
Elias nodded. That's me then. Why go anywhere when I die? I'm Gordon Tartarus. Luna liked to ignore his self-loathing.
What do you mean by if, Elias? Upon your death you shall be judged, as all are. Such is life on a quest. It is a fact of living.
I don't think so, Elias replied. Because if I remember correctly, a magnature signature was a fact of life in your world too. And yet who's lacking one? He snorted dismissively. I'm thinking it has less to do with magic and more to do with the fact that your signatures are evidence for a soul. I have no signature, so it stands to reason that I also have no measurable soul. When I die, there'll be nothing but a body lying in the dirt. He whimpered. And that terrifies me more than any punishment in hell.
Then why, Elias?
Luna asked.
If you hold a fear of death, then why would you try to end your life prematurely?
Before? I don't know. It just seemed like the right thing to do. Now? Bookbinder and Nightflash don't need to be thinking about me for eternity. I want them to forget me, and then they can find their happiness together. He shook his head as anger began pouring from him. How selfish have I been? Making friends, playing at somebody's son. I'm no better than a rabid dog. And if life wasn't so cruel, I would have been put down a long time ago. He shivered, and Luna felt cold seep back into the air. She resisted the urge to growl, and she sent a mental threat at the wendigos creeping about outside.
You will not get this one beast,
She challenged.
He is mine, and I will make him better.
The human continued. By living, I'm only causing people pain, even if they don't know what's happening. Luna nuzzled his back. Maybe she could physically push love into his heart. Even if not, she at least enjoyed the sensation.
Elias, please do not lose hope.
She said as she shifted, wrapping her tail around his intertwined legs.
You have an entire life ahead of you, and I know as a certainty that the Keepers will judge the entirety of your life. Soul or no, you are alive, and I have no doubts they will find you wherever you go after you die. One horrible act in the beginning can be erased with years of shared love and kindness.
She rubbed her cheek against his shoulder.
You have made such progress in improving yourself. No more are you the distant, quick-to-anger man that I found in the woods. You may not have noticed, but You have much greater restraint now, and much greater compassion. I shudder to think of what you will be like in 20 years.
She chuckled, prodding his ribs as she tried to force him to smile.
Maybe if you continue at the pace you are at, I can give my crown to you and retire. All hail Princess Bright, the first human equestrian princess.
Elias nodded weakly, and Luna smiled wide as she saw him smirk. Do you think I'll have to get wings in the horn too? Luna nodded.
Oh, I am more than sure you will have the entire package. You'll be a fuzzy little pony princess, benevolent and kind to all your soft, fuzzy subjects.
Elias' smirk turned into a grin. I think I'll reinstate Prima Nocta. Maybe public executions too. No more petty thievery in this kingdom. Luna groaned loudly and slapped the back of his head.
You are insufferable. Tia would have to put you on the moon for a 1,000-year stint.
She nuzzled the area where she struck, relishing in the fresh whiff of his hair.
But please do not throw your life away, Elias. Not based on fear. You have a soul. I can feel it. The Keepers will find you worthy if you keep pushing forward. You are close to finding true happiness. I know it. Just wait and see. Enjoy your time with Bookbinder and Night Flash. They love you so much.
She felt a brief pang in her heart as she held the human close. Elias stared at the fire in silence once more, and Luna took the time to do a bit of friendly grooming. She conjured a magical brush and began to run it through his damp hair, straightening out as she undid his hair tie. She wondered what he would look like clean-shaven and with short hair. It would probably make the human look roguish and quite dashing. The longer she pictured the human with minute physical changes, the more she flustered. So Luna decided to clear her mind and focus on brushing his hair. It blindsided her when he asked, Princess, are we friends? Luna had to try hard not to rip the brush from his head mid-stroke. She took a deep breath, wondering briefly why he was full of deep questions today, when she formulated her answer.
Well,
She stated carefully.
I would have to say no. You made yourself very clear when we shared a cell. Your words were, we are not friends, and we never will be. Despite the ridiculous notions behind the statement, I have respected that wish and remained away, at least as best as I could.
Elias seemed to sink into the floor, and he tried to move away. A wing prevented that, ensuring that he stayed pressed against her chest fluff.
Has that wish changed?
She asked with a knowing smile. He could not have brought up the issue if he did not wish it to change. Friendship would be an important step, and Luna would be remiss if she didn't take the opportunity to move closer to him to her side. Yes. He replied softly, curling in on himself as if to hide from his admission. Luna just smiled and felt her heart warm. Butterflies flew in her stomach, but she attributed that to her light dinner. She nuzzled his neck softly.
Then I would say that we are friends, Elias. I think you are a wonderful, brave man, and I would be glad to have you closer in my life.
She watched him smile as she used the feather to tickle under his chin.
I could use a new human pillow.
She added playfully.
Bookbinder may have ulterior motives for adopting you. You are very warm, and I must say, I am jealous that she gets you to bed with every day.
Luna blushed heavily as she realized what she had just said. Elias didn't seem to notice as he chuckled at her continued tickling. That only served to make her blush worse. Luna found that she liked hearing him laugh. She could listen to him laugh forever, but Luna let the feather fall away. She didn't want to push the man too far. Can I ask you a favor, Princess? Elias asked. Luna resumed petting his hair.
If we are friends, then it is Luna while in private. And of course you can, Elias. I wish to see you happy, and I will do anything to make that happen.
Elias sighed. Please don't tell Night Flash or Binder about what happened tonight. Luna frowned.
Elias, it would be better too.
Please, Luna, you can't tell them, he pleaded. It would break Bookbinder's heart, and I wouldn't be able to bear that. He tried to rise, but with his legs tangled with hers, as well as the hooves around his chest and the wing draped over his body, the human couldn't move much. This form of imprisonment seemed to make him squirm more as he tried to escape his plead case. Unwilling to let the human free of her cuddles, Luna coaxed him down, rubbing his back and neck as she made him relax back into her grasp.
All right, Elias.
Luna said softly.
I shall keep your secret, but only on the condition that you stay here tonight. I will not condemn a friend to spend Hearth's warming eve alone. Tia shall understand. I shall even have her bring us some food so that you may restore your strength.
Elias nodded, and Luna almost cooed as he adjusted himself against her fur. She felt a hand grasped at her chest fluff, and the human's face pressed against her neck. Okay. Thank you, Luna. Luna smiled and laid her head across his back.
You are most welcome. Now rest. I shall be here to ward away your nightmares.
She lit her horn and cast a minor sleep spell on him, continuing to pet him as he drifted away into slumber. She then cast a minor warming spell, followed by an aura to ward away the dreams of any kind. She didn't know how well it would work, but she had to try something. Once he began to snore, Luna rose, using a large pillow to temporarily take her place. She was pleased to note a look of discomfort from her disappearance, and Luna set to work quickly. To comfort the sleeping Elias, of course, and it certainly wasn't because she enjoyed having the human pressed against her side. Levitating several objects around her room, Luna worked fast. She penned 2 letters, one to Celestia with the reason for her continued and now permanent absence, as well as a petition for food to be brought to her room. Luna briefly considered asking her to bring a few ponies to snuggle with Elias. Then a pang of jealousy touched her chest, and she left it out. She would hold Elias alone tonight. As she set the letters away, Luna wrote up a second one, with her destination already in mind. Bookbinder. Luna kept her word to keep Elias' suicide attempt a secret, but he heavily emphasized that the human missed both of the ponies. She asked Bookbinder to be at the castle early to spend Hearthwarming Day with Elias. After giving them his location, she sent the letter away. Satisfied that the holidays would be saved for everyone, she levitated Elias into the air. She adjusted the pillows and blankets to make it the appropriate bed for both of them, adding a few extra for personal effects in the mix to make it extra comfortable. Then Luna settled on her cozy throne, laying Elias down beside her. She gently removed the pillow from the grasp, then dragged the human to her side with a wing. The human sighed happily and buried his face into her chest fluff, causing Luna to giggle. She knew he wouldn't be like this when he woke up, and it would likely be a very long time before she found herself close to the human at all, so she relished every bit of the contact, nuzzling his head as she drew in his scent. A thin book levitated over from the nightstand. It was a childhood book of hers, a book that would only read during hearth warming. It would be a perfect read while she waited for her food. Luna smiled widely as Elias hugged her tightly, and she nuzzled his sleeping face before cracking open the cover as she began reading aloud.
'Twas Hearth's warming eve, and all through the house, not a thing was stirring, not even a mouse.